Well, good morning. What a beautiful day in our nation's capital. And it is a beautiful day for a lot of reasons other than the weather. My name is Congressman Andy Barr from Kentucky's 6th Congressional District in central Kentucky. Thank you all for being here today to discuss a very important topic. The topic is addressing homelessness in America, which unfortunately is up, and why the federal government is exclusively focusing on the misguided housing first methodology, and how that exclusive reliance on housing first is hampering efforts to combat homelessness in this country and prohibiting federal grant funding from reaching worthy providers. Last year, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness under Dr. Robert Marbut, who is here with us today, released a report that found that the one-size-fits-all approach to homelessness is not effective and has actually led to an increase in the number of unsheltered homeless since the U.S. adopted housing first as its official policy. In the 5 years after 2014, when the United States adopted housing first as its exclusive solution to combating homelessness, the number of unsheltered homeless increased more than 20%, despite substantial increases in federal funding to fight homelessness. This sharp increase came after a decline in homelessness of roughly 31% between 2007 and 2014. The study shows that more money without the appropriate policy changes is not the answer. Many transitional housing facilities in my district do not qualify for federal funds because they require participation in wraparound services such as counseling, addiction recovery services, financial education, or career development as a condition of continued residency, or they mandate sobriety for the residents. These requirements are necessary and effective in many cases, including for individuals recovering from addiction. The facilities, some of which are faith-based, or use successful programs like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, have a track record of successfully transitioning individuals out of homelessness and towards self-sufficiency, but they cannot access federal funds under current law. I've heard many examples of why an exclusive reliance on housing first is the wrong path. When I visited a transitional housing facility in my district that caters to women recovering from addiction, one resident told me she couldn't be around other individuals who are using drugs, or she may relapse and compromise the progress she'd made. She told me it would be cruel to subject her to that, but that in this particular facility, the guidelines prohibiting drug use in the facility helped her on the road to recovery. But that facility could not access federal funds because it was not housing first. Unfortunately, despite a demonstrably successful track record of transitioning individuals from homelessness to self-sufficiency, this facility and others like it are cut off from HUD grant funding because of requirements or mandated wraparound services, despite whether or not those requirements are in the best interest of the individual. And that is why today I'm announcing the introduction of the Housing Promotes Livelihood and Ultimate Success Act, or the Housing Plus Act, to expand the universe of assistance and support more providers in the fight against homelessness, not needlessly limiting the resources to some because they operate in a different model. The exclusive reliance on housing first is not the answer. And all of the above approach is the answer, and my bill will put us on that path. This bill is the direct product of my conversations with providers and people on the ground in my district. My constituents informed me of a problem, and I'm working to fix it. I want to thank the Texas Public Policy Foundation for supporting this legislation and for raising the profile of this important issue. You have been great partners in this effort, and I want to especially recognize Michelle Steeb, Senior Fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, who is here with us today, and who is the point person on the Texas Public Policy Foundation's initiative to transform the United States and Texas's homelessness policy. I'd also like to thank Dr. Marbut for his tireless advocacy on this issue. My friend Congressman Roger Williams and Congressman Chip Roy, who have taken up the mantle with me in the fight against the exclusive reliance on Housing First. I would also like to extend thanks to our guests, Adriana and Anna, who will provide us firsthand account of why our legislative efforts are so important. With that, I'll turn the microphone over to Michelle Steeb from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, who will give a great overview on this issue and introduce our speakers. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
you. Good afternoon, almost. Thank you again to Congressman Barr for addressing the concerns of his constituents and concerns that really extend across every district in the United States. I know this firsthand. Prior to joining Texas Public Policy Foundation, where I proudly oversee their efforts to transform homelessness policy, I spent 13 years leading one of the Northern California's largest and most successful programs for homeless women and children. A program which, by the way, the Department of Corrections in California asked us to replicate for women transitioning from prison. However, in 2017, the county in which we reside chose to adopt Housing First as their one-size-fits-all solution to homelessness. Our nonprofit lost nearly $1 million in annual funding with 6 weeks' notice, purely on the basis of our requirements. Requirements to be sober in our program, requirements to do work training, to engage in counseling, even daily chores. This is the reason we lost funding, not because of outcomes. These requirements were instituted to prepare our clients for success in life on the outside of our four walls and to protect them from trauma, additional trauma. Most of the homeless have experienced a significant amount of trauma by the time that we see them. But these requirements were the reasons we lost this funding. Today, you'll hear from Adriana Granlund, a client who successfully graduated our program. She's now an addiction counselor and a homeowner. So let's give her a quick round of applause. However, prior to entering our program 5 years ago, Adriana was the recipient of Housing First No Strings Attached voucher. She'll speak to the detrimental impacts of that gift. You'll also hear from Anna Valeria Eisman, who leads a successful nonprofit in New York for the homeless. She'll share insight as to how to best help the homeless heal, grow, and prosper. You'll hear from Dr. Marbut, who Congressman Barr referenced earlier, who led the production of the Expanding the Toolbox report, a report that includes the first ever analysis of data since HUD's 2013 one-size-fits-all rollout of Housing First. As he shares this data and the report's recommendations with you, you'll come to understand why in June this year, the Biden administration quietly removed this report from the public eye. Last but not least, you'll hear from my friends and fellow Texans, Congressman Roger Williams and Congressman Chip Roy, who will address the need to overhaul this policy, as well as the $24 billion in low-barrier housing vouchers proposed in the reconciliation bill. Why Congress should unequivocally reject this proposal based on the disastrous results achieved by its identical twin, Housing First. I'd like to now introduce Chip Roy.
Well, thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Roger. I think Roger would have been going first, but I've got another engagement that I've got to get to, so he very politely is letting me go first here.
I didn't know I did.
Yeah, that's why I did it. No, look, it's an honor to be here with my friend Andy Barr. We actually were at college at the same time together at the University of Virginia. Roger is actually my congressman. I keep my eyes on him on the floor. Now redistricting will get me into my own district. And my fellow former colleagues at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, where I worked before I ended up running for Congress a few years ago. We're here for a really critically important issue. I mean, most of what happens in this building behind us is unfortunately a lot of noise, and unfortunately doesn't do a lot of good for people directly. But we're here dealing with the human issue of homelessness that affects all of us. It affects our communities. And look, I can tell you, as someone who represents downtown and South Austin, we've got a major homelessness problem, and the very left-leaning city council and mayor have the exact wrong prescriptions for that homelessness problem. We're seeing it unfold, and it's affecting real lives with homeless encampments, with rampant increase of drug use because of the bad and failed policies. But meanwhile, that's juxtaposed against policies that work, where the people in the Austin community in Central Texas come together. Mobile Loaves and Fishes and the organization there connected with Community First. Community First, which it's the best of what civil society offers, where human beings, community members come together with their dollars to create an environment where people can have a community to get off the streets, get housing, get the help they need, be with like-minded people to lift each other up and get into housing, because that's the path. It's civil society. It's not a top-down approach. It's not a government mandate, government strict rules and regulations approach that then limits the ability of organizations of faith, organizations in the community broadly, to use those dollars and those resources to help lift people up in a holistic approach. I'm proud to stand here with Andy Barr, and I'm proud of him introducing this bill. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of this bill. Frankly, I'll be blunt, Republicans need to do a better job talking about the issues that directly affect people in our communities. As a Christian, I believe this, but I believe in the approach of civil society and of human beings helping each other. I don't believe in top-down approaches that limit the creativity and the ability of people, Texans, to be able to help fellow Texans, as well as in Kentucky and throughout this great country. I'm proud to be here, proud to be with this great group, and appreciate all of the hard work, and I'll turn it back over to Andy. God bless.
Yeah, so now Robert Marvin.
Thank you. And Housing First is not working, and fundamentally the reason why Housing First is not working is it just doesn't address the root causes of homelessness. For about 80% of the people experiencing homelessness in the United States, it's either substance use disorders, disease, it's mental health, behavioral health. And what Housing First did was take away all those requirements, took away the funding, made it where you can't provide wraparound services anymore. And all we've done is turned it into a giveaway voucher program with no requirements, no treatment program, and such. And here are what the numbers, and our report talked a lot about the numbers. Since the adoption, the federal adoption of Housing First, homelessness, unsheltered homelessness has gone up 20.5%. But what's more amazing is if you look at California, it's the only state that takes 100% of their funding into the federal model of Housing First. And by state law, they passed a state law that 100% of their state money goes, and they encourage all the local money to go. So they're triple all in, and their number is up 47.1% since adopting the Housing First model at the state level. So it's just not working. And the report we talked about last year that we finally got a strategic plan out that talks about what you should be doing. And one of the most important things is whatever your housing model is, you have to have treatment and recovery with it. That's why Congressman Barr's Housing Plus Act, it directly addresses that. It allows you to bring in the wraparound services and provides a revenue stream. So not only are you allowed to do it, it has the revenue that comes with it. That's what will reduce homelessness, not just giving away vouchers and giving away vouchers. And so I'd like to thank my fellow Texans, Congressman Roy and Williams, for helping to support Congressman Barr's, and really want to particularly thank you for your leadership. He got this from the beginning and has just been a fabulous leader on this. So I'm turning it, I think, over to Adriana.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you. My name is Adriana, and today I am an addiction counselor and proud mother of 3 beautiful children. I'm also a homeowner. But in 2015, I nearly died from my addiction and my struggles. My addiction to drugs resulted in me and my children becoming homeless. Under the Housing First, I was gifted a subsidized apartment with no expectations that I would quit using drugs, with no expectations that I would do anything more with my life. My addiction got the best of me. I lost custody of my children, which resulted in my losing my apartment, as it was a family's only unit. At the end of my rope, I found St. John's, which was being run by Michelle Steve at the time. St. John's helped me by requiring me to get sober, to engage in counseling and employment training. Once I had myself together, they helped me reunite with my children. As a former addict and an addiction counselor for nearly 4 years now, very few people will choose to work on themselves. Instead, they choose what they know, repeating the cycle over and over until oftentimes it is too late. A house alone will not fix the homeless crisis. Instead of our country, what we need to do is have more options like St. John's program for real change. It has changed my life. I'm a better person for it. Thank you. I'll be turning it over to Anna now.
I have served in several capacities in the field of homelessness and housing for over a decade. This work began by simply doing street outreach in my city, under bridges, tunnels, and beside train tracks. I did not have any answers at the time, so I just sat with people experiencing homelessness and listened to their stories, to their trauma, to their hopelessness. But most importantly, I heard their potential, their insight, and their courage. For the past 4 years, I have served as the CEO of a faith-based homeless service organization in Rochester, New York. We provide emergency, transitional, and permanent supportive housing, as well as a residential recovery program and emergency services like food, clothing, and eviction prevention. Like many other faith-based agencies, we provide almost all of these services through private funding. One of the most crucial elements of our work is our ability to provide various housing models that are based on the specific needs of the individual or family being served. Our outcomes speak for themselves, with an overwhelming majority of our program participants exiting to independent housing, full-time jobs, and long-term recovery. I am not saying housing first should not be practiced at all. In reality, it can be an effective approach to a select group within the homeless population. However, housing first ignores the underlying and unique needs of the homeless population and almost completely ignores homeless families because they are less likely to meet the definition of chronically homeless. From a funding perspective, it marginalizes faith-based providers like us who have offered decades of transformational programs that exhibit the effectiveness of on-site support and recovery services. The Expanding the Toolbox report, the report that the Biden administration has removed from public view, is an important part of this conversation because it addresses the need for us to look at homelessness through a new lens. It does not require us to start over, but it gives us an idea of how to dig deeper. The answer to homelessness includes dignity, a sense of self-worth, a community of support, the recognition of potential, and a roof. I see this approach at work every single day. Lives saved, families reconnected, school students achieving academic success, and individuals overcoming the pain of addiction, mental illness, and domestic violence. This is how to best address homelessness. Thank you. And Congressman Williams.
Well, thank you very much, and it's good morning, and thank you for all of you being here this morning. I am Congressman Roger Williams. I represent 25th District in Texas, which also represents Austin, Texas. I want to start by thanking Michelle for the important work she's done with the Texas Public Policy Foundation in proposing real solutions to solve the homelessness crisis instead of simply repeating the mistakes of the past, as we see with this administration. I also want to thank my buddy. He's my colleague, but he's my buddy, Andy Barr. And I want to thank Chip Roy, too, for their passion on this issue and showing that Republicans are serious about delivering results for America's vulnerable populations, not just making them more reliant on failed government programs, which is what the Democratic Party is all about. In my district, Austin, Texas, has garnered some headlines for what increasingly seems like all the wrong reasons. The homelessness crisis is out of hand due to failed liberal policies and highlights the failure of big government solutions to fix local problems and fix hearts and souls. In Austin, families and businesses are fed up with their city's response to the homelessness crisis that threatens the livelihood and safety of families and small businesses all over. You can't walk down 6th Street, which used to be a famous street in Austin, or drive under any bridge without wondering what all of our taxpayer dollars are doing to help these people that are in need while protecting the interests of local Texans. Protecting the status quo is at the root of the problem. Luckily, we have great leaders. We have great leaders here with us today who are tackling this issue head on and not relying on reusing failed incentives and initiatives. But Democrats are taking a different plan and tried and failed approach and doubling down on their costly, unsuccessful policies of the past instead of working to develop a new, properly tailored approach for the future. In their Build Back Broke program, as many of us call it, they want to spend billions more dollars in emboldening their housing first policy, despite the evidence that such programs simply do not work. We need to move on from the one-size-fits-all housing first policy that we've talked about this morning that was an abject failure in blue states like California, but also successes in California. And allow greater flexibility for communities to find localized solutions that can finally deliver change and good results. So people fall on hard times. We all do. And when they do, we should be there to lift them up, particularly those who struggle with addiction or mental illness. Nothing is more saddening than to walk around Austin, Texas, and see homeless veterans that honorably serve their country living on the sidewalk. That literally tears your heart apart. In order to break this cycle, we need to give people opportunities instead of guarantees, because the government will never be able to lift people up who have no reason to help themselves. Our dollars need to be tailored to programs that promote independence and a new outlook on life instead of perpetual government handouts. I'm proud to work alongside my colleagues in organizations like TPPF, who are doing all that they can to lift people up and make them more reliant on government that fails them in word and action. So every American should have the opportunity to achieve the American dream. Right now, the Democrats propose the American scheme, and I remain committed to working on effective bipartisan solutions to make that reality. We never give in, we never give out, and we're going to take days on and not take days off until we get this handled. May God bless all of you in this program, and may God bless these people that are working so hard to make lives better for everyone in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, before we take some questions, I just want to wrap up. What this is about today is Adriana. This is about Adriana. She is inspiring all of us here today. And the people in this country who are struggling in poverty and addiction and homelessness, they deserve better. They deserve better than these failed policies that don't expect anything from them. And we need these people who are struggling in poverty. This country needs Adriana and people like her because they are worthy. And this policy of housing first doesn't meet them where they are. We need policies that actually address the underlying causes of homelessness. Homelessness is not an issue of not having shelter. Homelessness is caused by something else. It's caused by a lack of skills. It's caused by a lack of a job. It's caused by addiction. It's caused by mental illness. Let's help these people deal with those issues so that they can live in non-subsidized permanent housing and take care of themselves and their kids and have a hopeful, prosperous future. They deserve it. They deserve it. So with that, thank you all for being here. We'd love to take any questions, if there are any. I think we've made our case. But thank you all so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.